Picture this: a civilization so advanced, so meticulously planned, that it thrived over 4,000 years ago, yet its secrets still lie buried beneath the sands of time. The Harappan Civilization, stretching across what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, was a marvel of the ancient world, with grid-patterned cities, sophisticated drainage systems, and a script that remains undeciphered to this day. This society was centuries ahead of its time. But here's the twist: despite decades of archaeological discoveries, we've barely scratched the surface of their story. What if I told you that the truths hidden in their ruins could rewrite history as we know it? Think about the last time you walked through a bustling city, traffic flowing, people chatting, life humming along in perfect chaos. Now imagine a metropolis just as vibrant, but built over 5 millennia ago. The Harappans didn't just survive, they engineered a way of life so efficient, so harmonious, that modern urban planners still study their blueprints. Yet for all their brilliance, they left behind no grand temples, no towering statues of kings, no epic tales of conquest. Instead, they left puzzles, tiny seals etched with mysterious symbols, weights so precise they rival modern standards, and cities abandoned without a trace of war or decay. Why? What happened to them? And why does their silence speak louder than the ruins of other ancient empires? That's where the real mystery begins. Today, we're peeling back the layers of one of history's most enigmatic cultures. We'll uncover 30 astonishing secrets, from their possible connections to mythical lands to the shocking reasons their cities might have vanished overnight. You'll hear about the dancing girl statue that defies artistic conventions, the underground tunnels that hint at rituals we can't begin to comprehend, and the eerie evidence that suggests they traded with civilizations thousands of miles away. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a detective story, and every clue we unearth brings us closer to understanding a people who mastered the art of living, then disappeared without a whisper. So, are you ready to step into the shadows of the past and uncover what the Harappans never wanted us to find? Among the most tantalizing mysteries of the Harappan civilization is the script they left behind: thousands of inscriptions etched onto tiny seals, pottery, and copper tablets, yet not a single word of it can be read today. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, which were cracked using the Rosetta Stone and other bilingual texts, the Harappan symbols have no known parallel. They appear as intricate combinations of fish, insects, geometric shapes, and abstract marks, arranged in short sequences that may be names, prayers, or even trade records. But here's the catch. After more than a century of study, no one agrees on whether these symbols represent a full language, a shorthand for merchants, or something else entirely. Take the famed unicorn seal, for example, a delicate carving of a mythical beast flanked by cryptic symbols. Some researchers argue the script is logographic, with each symbol standing for a word or concept, much like ancient Chinese. Others believe it's a syllabic system where signs represent sounds. Then there's the wildcard theory that it wasn't a true language at all, but a proto-writing system used for accounting or religious rites, like the token-based records of earlier Mesopotamians. The debate grows even thornier because we've never found lengthy Harappan texts, just brief inscriptions, often no longer than 5 symbols. Imagine trying to decode English from nothing but street signs and product labels. The quest to crack this code has led to some fascinating, if controversial, attempts. In the 1960s, a Finnish scholar claimed to decipher it as an early form of Dravidian, the language family spoken in southern India today. More recently, computational analyzers have suggested the symbols follow patterns seen in spoken languages, hinting at grammatical structure. Yet skeptics point out that without a eureka moment, like discovering a Harappan king's decree in both their script and a known language, the symbols could remain silent forever. And that silence speaks volumes. If the script is ever deciphered, it could unlock everything from Harappan trade routes to their beliefs about the afterlife. Until then, those tiny seals sit like locked diaries, their stories waiting to be told. What's remarkable isn't just that they wrote, but that they wrote in a way designed to last millennia, only to leave us guessing. One of the greatest enigmas surrounding the Harappan civilization isn't how they thrived, but how they vanished. Unlike the dramatic falls of Rome or the Maya, marked by invasion and collapse, the Harappans' decline is eerily quiet, a fading whisper in the archaeological record. Theories abound, each more tantalizing than the last, yet none offer a definitive answer. Was it a slow unraveling, or did catastrophe strike overnight? Let's start with the land itself. The Harappans were masters of water, building their cities along the mighty Indus and its tributaries, but rivers, like civilizations, are never static. Recent geological studies reveal something startling. The Gagga-Hakra River, once thought to be the mythical Saraswati of ancient texts, may have abruptly changed course or dried up entirely around 1900 BC. Satellite imagery shows paleo-channels, ghostly riverbeds buried under centuries of silt, suggesting a hydrological crisis. Without reliable water for crops, trade, or sanitation, even the most advanced society would crumble. But here's the twist: not all cities fell at once. Some settlements in the east thrived longer, hinting at a staggered decline, as if the civilization was retreating step by step from a creeping disaster. Then there's the climate angle. Core samples from the Arabian Sea tell a grim story. Around the same time, monsoon patterns shifted dramatically. Tree rings and sediment layers point to prolonged droughts punctuated by violent floods. Imagine entire harvests failing year after year, reservoirs evaporating under a relentless sun. And then, when the rains finally came, they arrived as torrents that swept away what little remained. This wasn't just bad weather, it was a climatic knockout punch. Yet, intriguingly, there's no evidence of mass graves or war. Instead, we find orderly abandonments, valuables removed, doors sealed, as if people hoped to return. Now pivot to the human factor. Some scholars argue that the Harappans' greatest strength, their standardization, became their downfall. Their cities were marvels of uniformity, from brick sizes to street layouts. But rigidity can be fragile. When trade routes falter due to climate shifts or political upheaval elsewhere, their economy, dependent on meticulous weights and measures, may have spiraled. Unlike Mesopotamia or Egypt, where rulers could rally armies or redistribute grain, the Harappans show no signs of centralized crisis response. No palaces, no storied kings, just a society that quietly dispersed, adapting elsewhere as farmers or artisans. The most haunting question isn't why they fell, but why they left so little trace of their end. No epics of downfall, no last stands, just empty streets, silent seals, and a legacy that slipped like water through fingers into the sands of time. Mohenjo-Daro's Great Bath isn't just an ancient pool, it's a riddle wrapped in baked brick. At first glance, this meticulously engineered structure, lined with waterproof tar and fed by a sophisticated drainage system, screams ritual purity. Archaeologists have long assumed it was a sacred space for ceremonial baths, akin to later Hindu practices. But what if we've been misreading the water all along? Peel back the layers and you'll find clues hinting at far more intriguing possibilities. Start with the architecture. The Great Bath isn't isolated. It's the centerpiece of a sprawling complex with adjacent rooms and staircases, more like a community hub than a secluded temple. Three-dimensional reconstructions reveal something astonishing. The bath aligns precisely with certain celestial events. During the summer solstice, sunlight strikes the water at an angle that illuminates a specific corner, a feature seen in other ancient cultures for tracking seasons. Could this have been an astronomical calendar guiding planting cycles or festivals? The Harappans were master urban planners. Blending utility with celestial observation wouldn't be out of character. Then there's the social angle. Unlike later civilizations that reserved grand structures for elites, the Great Bath shows no signs of exclusivity. no gated entrances, no royal insignia. Its design with wide steps and shallow edges suggests accessibility, even conviviality. Imagine it as a proto-town square where traders negotiated deals, elders settled disputes, or families gathered during scorching summers. The acoustics of the enclosed courtyard amplify sound eerily well, perfect for public announcements or performances, but the boldest theory, a hydraulic marvel testing ground. The bath's precise construction, uniform bricks, gradient slopes, and an underground hypocaust-like system mirrors later Roman engineering. Some researchers propose it was a demonstration piece, a way to showcase Harappan mastery of water management to visiting traders. After all, a civilization that built dockyards and irrigation canals wouldn't shy away from civic innovation. Whatever its purpose, the Great Bath's true genius lies in its ambiguity. It refuses to fit neatly into one box, just like the civilization that built it. Every theory, ritual, observatory, social forum adds another brushstroke to our portrait of a people who saw water not just as a resource, but as a canvas for their ingenuity. And that's what makes this ancient pool so endlessly fascinating. It wasn't just for bathing, it was for thinking. Buried beneath the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, in what is now modern-day Iraq, archaeologists have uncovered tiny, unmistakable artifacts stamped with the same intricate symbols found thousands of miles away in Harappan cities. These discoveries aren't just curiosities, they're smoking guns, proving that 4,000 years ago, two of the world's first great civilizations were engaged in trade so extensive it spanned continents. The Harappans didn't just dominate their local economy, they built a commercial network that reached across deserts, mountains, and even open ocean. Take the case of the Gulf seal, a Harappan-style stamp found in the Mesopotamian city of Ur. Carved with the familiar unicorn motif and cryptic script, it wasn't just a trinket. It was a receipt, a trademark, or perhaps even a diplomatic passport. Mesopotamian records from the same era reference a mysterious land called Meluha, where exotic goods like ivory, peacocks, and ebony originated. Linguistic analysis suggests Meluha was their name for the Harappan region, cementing the connection. But here's what's staggering. Mesopotamia had no direct land route to the Indus Valley. So how did these goods travel? The answer lies in the waves. Harappan engineers didn't just build cities, they mastered the sea. At Lothal, a coastal settlement in modern-day Gujarat, excavations reveal a massive dockyard complete with tidal locks, an ancient version of the Panama Canal. This wasn't just for fishing boats. Recovered cargo lists show lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian from Gujarat, and even Mesopotamian cylinder seals, all passing through this maritime hub. Imagine fleets of wooden ships, their hulls laden with timber, precious stones, and cotton textiles, braving the Arabian Sea's monsoon winds. They'd sail up the Persian Gulf, docking at Mesopotamian ports like a Bronze Age version of today's global shipping lanes. The real clincher, scientists have traced strands of Harappan cotton embedded in Mesopotamian silver artifacts, while Harappan sites yield Mesopotamian-style beads. This wasn't occasional barter, it was a full-blown trade economy, and it raises a tantalizing question. Did these exchanges go deeper than goods? Some scholars argue the Harappans influenced Mesopotamian weights and measures, while others speculate that their seafaring prowess inspired later Phoenician traders. Either way, these hidden routes rewrite our understanding of ancient globalization, proof that even in a world without maps or GPS, humanity's drive to connect was as fierce then as it is now. Standing just 10 centimeters tall, the Dancing Girl of Mohenjo-Daro is a bronze figurine that punches far above her weight in historical intrigue. Unearthed in 1926, this 4,000-year-old statue captures a moment of effortless grace, her left arm cocked at the hip, right hand resting defiantly on her waist, one leg slightly bent as if caught mid-step to an unheard rhythm. But don't let her playful pose fool you. This tiny masterpiece isn't just art, it's a coded message about Harappan society, technology, and maybe even spirituality. Start with her craftsmanship. The figurine wasn't merely molded, she was cast using the lost wax technique, a method so advanced for its time that it wouldn't become widespread elsewhere for another 1,000 years. Artisans would sculpt her in beeswax, coat her in clay, then melt the wax away to pour molten bronze into the cavity. The result, a hollow, lightweight figure with astonishing detail, from her coiled bracelets to her asymmetrical stance. What's baffling is that while other contemporary cultures like Mesopotamia produced static, formal statues, the Harappans chose motion. The dancing girl's naturalism, her slightly parted lips, the tension in her limbs, suggests a culture that valued observation and vitality over rigid symbolism. Now, who was she? Theories abound. Some argue she's a temple dancer, a Devadasi-like figure performing sacred rituals. Others see her as an elite woman, her ornate jewelry, 25 bangles on one arm alone, hinting at high status. Then there's the radical idea. She might represent a goddess of music or fertility, a precursor to later Hindu deities like Saraswati. But here's the twist: unlike Egyptian or Mesopotamian art, Harappan depictions rarely glorify rulers or warriors. If the dancing girl was divine, she was accessible, humanized, a stark contrast to the distant, towering gods of other ancient cultures. Cross-cultural connections deepen the mystery. Strikingly similar bronze dance figurines appear in the Indus Valley's contemporary trade partner, Mesopotamia, though theirs are more stylized. Even more tantalizing are parallels with the later terracotta dancing girl of Piri Ono Gundai, suggesting a lasting artistic tradition. But the Harappan version stands apart with its mix of sophistication and spontaneity, like a snapshot of a living moment frozen in metal. Perhaps her greatest secret isn't in her identity, but in what she reveals about Harappan values. In a civilization known for standardization, uniform bricks, weights, city layouts, the dancing girl is an exception. She's individual, dynamic, alive. That's why, after millennia, she still captivates, not as a relic, but as a reminder that even the most disciplined societies leave room for artistry, movement, and maybe even joy. The Pashupati seal is one of those rare artifacts that sparks more questions than answers. A tiny, square stamp from Mohenjo-Daro depicting a figure seated cross-legged, surrounded by animals with horns curling from his head. At first glance, he looks unmistakably like a prototype of the Hindu god Shiva, the lord of beasts and master of meditation. But dig deeper, and the simplicity unravels into a web of scholarly debate. Is this really a deity, or could it be a shaman mid-ritual, a tribal chief, or even a symbolic representation of nature itself? Let's start with the Shiva connection. The seal's iconography is eerily familiar. The figure sits in a yogic posture reminiscent of Shiva's later depictions as Mahayogi, the great ascetic. The animals encircling him, a tiger, elephant, rhinoceros, and buffalo, mirror Shiva's role as Pashupati, lord of animals. Even the horns resemble the crescent moon adorning Shiva's matted locks. Proponents of this theory point to continuity in Indian spirituality, suggesting the Harappans seeded ideas that blossomed into Hinduism millennia later. But here's the catch: the seal dates back to around 2500 BCE, while Shiva's earliest clear mentions in Hindu texts appear nearly 2000 years after that. Could a religious concept really lie dormant for so long, or is this a case of modern eyes seeing patterns that aren't there? Now flip the perspective. Anthropologists argue the figure might represent a shaman, a spiritual intermediary, not a god. In many ancient cultures, horned headdresses symbolized ritual authority, not divinity. The animals could depict a vision quest or spiritual familiars, common in shamanic traditions from Siberia to the Americas. Even the posture might not be meditation but a trance state induced by psychoactive plants, evidenced by similar poses in Central Asian shamanic art. If true, the seal captures a momentary ritual, not an eternal deity, then there's the ecological interpretation. The horned figure and his animal entourage might embody the Harappans' relationship with their environment, a synthesis of human and natural forces. Unlike later Hindu gods who transcend nature, this figure is immersed in it, perhaps reflecting a culture deeply attuned to seasonal cycles and animal migrations. The seal's compact design could be a storytelling device, a snapshot of myths lost to time. What makes the Pashupati seal so electrifying isn't just its ambiguity, but what it reveals about cultural memory. Whether proto-Shiva or shaman, this 4,000-year-old image forces us to confront how ideas morph across centuries and how easily symbols can be reclaimed, reinterpreted, or entirely reinvented. One thing's certain, the Harappans left us not just a seal but a mirror, and what we see in it says as much about us as it does about them. The streets of Mohenjo-Daro weren't just laid out in perfect grids, they were engineered with a feature so advanced it would take the rest of the world another 3,000 years to catch up, a city-wide drainage system that rivaled modern sanitation. While Egyptians were building pyramids and Mesopotamians constructing ziggurats, the Harappans were quietly perfecting something far more revolutionary: public hygiene on an industrial scale. Picture this: every house, from the grandest to the humblest, connected to a network of covered drains, all sloping precisely to carry wastewater out of the city. These weren't mere gutters, they were feats of hydraulic engineering, with manholes for maintenance, grease traps to filter debris, and even vents to prevent noxious gas buildup. The sophistication is staggering when you realize that at the same time, London's ancestors were dumping waste into open trenches, and Rome's famed sewers wouldn't appear for millennia. Zoom in on the details and the brilliance deepens. Harappan drains weren't haphazardly dug. They were constructed with standardized baked bricks, uniform in size and shape, fitted together with mortar so tight that even today, some sections remain intact. The slopes were calculated to a gradient that ensured water flowed swiftly enough to prevent stagnation but gently enough to avoid erosion. And here's the kicker: each home had its own private bathing area with a sloped floor that fed into the main system, meaning even personal hygiene was integrated into the civic plan. Compare that to medieval Europe, where chamber pots were routinely emptied into streets, and you start to grasp how far ahead the Harappans were. But the real marvel lies in what this system reveals about their values. Unlike other ancient societies that reserved advanced infrastructure for elites, Harappan plumbing was democratic. Workers' quarters had the same access as merchant homes, suggesting a society that prioritized collective well-being over hierarchy. Some archaeologists argue this egalitarianism extended to labor. The drains show no signs of rushed or shoddy work, hinting that those who built them took pride in their craft. The lingering question isn't just how they built it, but why no one else did. While the Indus Valley thrived, contemporaries like Mesopotamia relied on open cesspits, and the Minoans' famed plumbing only served palaces. The Harappan approach systemic, preventative, and inclusive feels almost modern in its philosophy. It's as if they understood that a civilization's greatness isn't measured by its monuments, but by how it cares for the everyday lives of its people. And that, perhaps, is their most enduring legacy. Buried in the ruins of Harappan cities, archaeologists have unearthed small, polished cubes of chert and agate objects so unassuming they might be mistaken for game pieces. But these were the pulse of an ancient economy, standardized weights crafted with a precision that would make modern metrologists gasp. Ranging from tiny fractions of a gram to hefty multiples, they follow a strict ratio, incrementing by a consistent factor of 2, then 16, then 8, forming a binary-like system millennia before computers. What's staggering isn't just their accuracy. Some deviate less than 1% from their intended mass, but how their influence may have rippled across civilizations, rewriting our understanding of early globalization. Compare these weights to their contemporaries. Egyptian deben and Mesopotamian shekels were functional but inconsistent, varying by region or era. The Harappans, by contrast, achieved near-perfect uniformity across their vast territory, from the Arabian Sea to the foothills of the Himalayas. A merchant in Lothal could trade with a counterpart in Harappa using identical measures, no conversion needed. This wasn't just convenience, it was economic genius. Standardized weights reduced fraud, streamlined taxation, and built trust in long-distance trade. The real bombshell, similar weight systems appear centuries later in the Persian Gulf and even Mesopotamia, suggesting the Harappans didn't just trade goods, they may have exported their entire commercial framework. Take the case of Dilmun, a Bronze Age trade hub in modern Bahrain. Excavations there uncovered weights matching the Harappan standard alongside Indus Valley seals. Even more telling, Mesopotamian records describe Meluhan Harappan merchants as trusted, hinting at a reputation for fairness rooted in their reliable measures. The implications are profound. The Harappans didn't just participate in trade networks, they may have set the rules. Yet the most haunting question lingers. How did a civilization with no known centralized ruler achieve such uniformity? Unlike Egypt's pharaohs or Mesopotamia's Luguls, the Harappans left no edicts mandating standards. Perhaps the answer lies in their pragmatism. In a society where commerce was the lifeblood, precision wasn't decreed, it was demanded. Every balanced scale, every fair deal was a silent testament to a culture that understood something timeless. Trust is the currency of civilization. And that's a lesson we're still reckoning with today. Buried just a few feet beneath the ruins of Harappa itself lies a mystery wrapped in pottery shards, the Cemetery H culture, named for the graves first uncovered in the 1920s. Unlike the orderly Harappan cities, these graves tell a story of change, even upheaval. Some skeletons are carefully interred in painted urns, others show signs of cremation, their charred bones mingling with offerings of food and beads. But what does this shift mean? Was Cemetery H the last gasp of the Harappan people, or the first whisper of something new? Start with the pottery, the most vivid clue. Cemetery H ceramics are splashed with motifs unseen in classic Harappan art. Sunbursts, peacocks, and humped bulls rendered in bold red and black. Some designs eerily echo later Vedic symbols, like the sun chariots described in the Rigveda. But here's where it gets complicated. While the pottery feels fresh, many vessel shapes, like the tall, slender urns used for burials, are unmistakably Harappan. It's as if the culture was reinventing itself, blending old forms with new ideas. The burial practices deepen the puzzle. Classic Harappans typically laid their dead to rest in simple pits, heads pointed north. Cemetery H rituals vary wildly. Some bodies are fully extended, others crouched like sleepers. Some urns contain only skulls, a practice that later appears in ancient Iran. This mosaic of traditions suggests a society in flux, possibly absorbing influences from migrating groups. But does this prove an Aryan invasion, as some early scholars claimed? Not so fast. Modern archaeology paints a subtler picture. There's no layer of ash, no mass graves to suggest violent conquest. Instead, climate data shows the region grew drier, pushing people eastward. Harappan refugees may have mingled with pastoralists from the steppes, creating hybrid customs over generations. The real takeaway, Cemetery H isn't a clean break, it's a dialogue. Those painted pots aren't just artifacts, they're pages in a story of adaptation where a civilization didn't just vanish, it transformed. High above the ancient city of Dolavera, perched on a massive sandstone gateway, looms one of archaeology's most electrifying puzzles. A 10-foot-long signboard made of gleaming white gypsum, its giant Harappan symbols inlaid in wood. This isn't just an artifact, it's the world's oldest known public inscription, a Bronze Age billboard shouting a message we can't yet hear. Unlike the tiny seals found elsewhere, these letters are monumental, each one nearly 18 inches tall, designed to be seen from afar. But what were they announcing? A king's decree, a warning, or something far more mysterious? First, consider the sheer audacity of its placement. The signboard wasn't tucked away in some administrative building. It crowned the northern gate of D'Olivera's citadel, the last thing travelers saw before entering the city. That deliberate visibility suggests it served a public function, like a civic motto or a declaration of identity. The material alone is a clue: gypsum, a luminous stone that would have caught the sunlight, making the symbols glow against the dark city walls. Whoever carved this wanted it seen. Then there's the script itself, 10 distinct Harappan signs arranged in a careful sequence. Some symbols resemble later Indian scripts, like the fish motif that evolved into the Bengali letter Ma, while others remain utterly alien. The most compelling theory: it might be a combined logographic and syllabic system, where some symbols stand for whole words like gate or welcome, while others represent sounds. Imagine it as a prehistoric welcome to D'Olivera sign, blending text and iconography. But here's where it gets wild. Unlike the repetitive merchant seals, this inscription is unique. The symbols don't recur in other Harappan sites, implying a highly specific message. Some researchers argue it could denote a royal title or city foundation date, akin to Mesopotamian foundation tablets. Others propose it marked a sacred threshold, a boundary between the mundane world and a ritual space. Supporting this, excavations revealed a ceremonial tank directly beneath the gate, suggesting the signboard might have loomed over processions or initiations. The most radical interpretation comes from archaeologists who note the symbol's alignment with celestial events. During the equinoxes, sunlight strikes certain glyphs at precise angles, almost as if the signboard doubled as an astronomical marker. If true, it wouldn't just announce a place, it would track time, merging civic pride with cosmic order. Yet for all our theories, the signboard's silence is its loudest feature. Without a Rosetta Stone to crack the code, it remains a speechless herald, its bold letters guarding secrets we're only beginning to guess. And that's the thrill. In a civilization that mastered urban planning, trade, and engineering, this giant sign reminds us how much we still don't know and how tantalizing the unknown can be. Every great ancient civilization left behind towering temples except one. While the Egyptians erected Karnak and the Mesopotamians built ziggurats that scraped the heavens, the Harappans constructed something far more puzzling: nothing. Not a single grand temple, no colossal statues of gods, no inscriptions praising divine rulers. In a world where religion and power were carved in stone, their silence is deafening. So where did they worship? The answer might lie not in soaring monuments, but in the quiet corners of their homes. Step inside a typical Harappan residence, and you'll spot something unusual. Small, elevated platforms in inner courtyards, often flanked by terracotta figurines or pottery laden with ash and charred grain. These aren't just decorative nooks, they're household shrines, intimate spaces where daily rituals unfolded. Archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of these domestic altars, some with traces of burnt offerings, others with carefully arranged figurines of women with elaborate headdresses or bulls with curved horns. The imagery is strikingly personal, a far cry from the impersonal grandeur of Egypt's temple complexes. This absence of monumental religion raises provocative questions. Were the Harappans fundamentally different in how they viewed the divine? Unlike Mesopotamia's terror of angry gods or Egypt's obsession with the afterlife, Harappan spirituality seems decentralized, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Their temples might have been kitchens where families shared meals as offerings, or courtyards where neighbors gathered under the stars. Even their most sacred object, the Pashupati seal, fits in the palm of your hand. But here's the twist. Some scholars argue we've been looking for the wrong kind of temples. At Mohenjo-Daro, a massive structure dubbed the Great Granary was long assumed to store grain until researchers noticed its layout mirrors later Hindu temple designs, with a central hall and smaller chambers for rituals. Another candidate, the Great Bath itself, its carefully channeled water possibly serving not just practical needs but purificatory rites. Without inscriptions, we're left reading architecture like tea leaves, searching for sacred patterns in the mundane. The most radical theory suggests the Harappans didn't need temples because they saw the divine everywhere. Their cities, with their precise cardinal alignments and engineered harmony between earth and water, might have been sacred spaces in their entirety. Imagine a civilization where the act of building a well or sweeping a street held as much spiritual weight as a pharaoh's obelisk. That's the real mystery, not where their temples were, but why they might have chosen not to build them at all. In the quiet earth of Rakhigarhi, a Harappan settlement twice the size of Mohenjo-Daro, scientists extracted something extraordinary from a 4,000-year-old skeleton, intact DNA. This wasn't just another bone sample, it was a time capsule, holding clues that would shatter long-held myths about the Harappan people and their connection to us today. The results, published in 2019, sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. The genetic blueprint revealed something astonishing. The Harappans weren't wiped out by invading Aryans, nor were they a lost race. They're still here. Their bloodlines flow unbroken into modern South Asians, debunking colonial-era theories in a single, double helix stroke. Let's unpack what the DNA actually showed. The Rakhigarhi individual carried genetic markers linking them to two ancient groups: Iranian agriculturalists who migrated eastward around 9,000 years ago, and South Asian hunter-gatherers who'd inhabited the subcontinent for millennia. But here's the critical twist: there was zero trace of the so-called Aryan steppe ancestry that some theories claimed swept in around 1500 BCE, displacing the Harappans. Instead, the data paints a picture of continuity. The Harappans didn't vanish, they gradually mixed with other local populations, their genes persisting in modern Indian, Pakistani, and even Afghan communities. This wasn't a civilization ended by invasion, it was one that evolved. Now, visualize the migration patterns like ripples in a pond. The Iranian-related ancestors of the Harappans likely arrived in waves, blending with indigenous groups to create the Indus Valley's unique melting pot. Fast forward to the civilization's decline, and the genetic record shows not replacement but addition. Later migrations from the steppes, the source of the Indo-European languages like Sanskrit, did introduce new ancestry, but it trickled in over centuries, blending with existing populations rather than erasing them. The result, a genetic tapestry where Harappan threads remain vividly visible. The implications are profound. For over a century, the Aryan invasion theory cast the Harappans as a doomed people, overrun by horseback-riding outsiders. But the Rakhigarhi DNA proves otherwise. It suggests the Vedas, Hinduism's oldest texts, weren't imported by conquerors, they emerged from a cultural exchange, with Harappan ideas woven into their verses. Even physical traits persist. The same genetic variant for dark skin found in the skeleton is still common in South India today. Perhaps most moving is what this reveals about identity. The Harappans weren't some distant other, their ancestors. Their cities may lie in ruins, but in the genes of a billion people, their legacy thrives. A silent, unbroken thread connecting the Bronze Age to the modern world. And that's a story far more powerful than any invasion myth. The Harappan city of Balakot wasn't just another coastal settlement. It was a factory, a laboratory, and a showroom all rolled into one, where the ocean's discarded treasures were transformed into luxury goods coveted across the ancient world. Step inside its workshops and you'd find artisans hunched over piles of conch shells, their hands moving with precision as they sawed, polished, and drilled their way to creating objects of startling beauty. This wasn't casual craftsmanship. It was industrial-scale production, turning seashells into everything from bangles that jingled on wrists to inlaid furniture accents for elites 1,000 miles inland. The star of Balakot's shell trade was the spiny chank, a large conch with a creamy, lustrous interior. Harappan workers would cut these shells into precise bangle segments, grinding them smooth before polishing them with abrasives until they gleamed like porcelain. But the real magic lay in their innovation. These artisans didn't just carve shells, they engineered them. Microscopic analysis reveals they used copper drills with diamond-like precision, creating perforations so exact that modern jewelers struggle to replicate them without power tools. Some bangles were even heat-treated to enhance their color, a technique previously thought to have been invented millennia later. Yet Balakot's workshops weren't just about aesthetics. Shell waste found at the site tells a fascinating story of efficiency. Broken pieces were recycled into smaller items, beads, pendants, even gaming pieces, leaving almost no material unused. This wasn't just art, it was a masterclass in sustainable production, centuries before the concept had a name. The scale was staggering. Excavations uncovered entire streets lined with shell debris, suggesting whole neighborhoods dedicated to this craft. The real revelation, though, is where these shell goods ended up. Harappan bangles have been found in Mesopotamian tombs, strung alongside gold and lapis lazuli, proving they were luxury exports. One theory suggests they were traded for silver, which the Harappans lacked but prized for their own jewelry. Imagine a Bronze Age supply chain stretching from Balakot's shores to Ur's royal tombs, all powered by something as humble as a seashell. But here's what's truly remarkable. This industry hints at a society that valued specialization. These artisans weren't part-time fishermen dabbling in crafts. They were professionals, their skills honed over generations. The uniformity of their products speaks to standardized training, almost like an ancient guild. In a world where survival often meant farming or fighting, the Harappans made room for experts who did nothing but turn shells into splendor. And that, perhaps, is the ultimate testament to their civilization's sophistication, not just what they made, but the system they built to make it. At the edge of the Thar Desert, where the Gaga River once flowed, the ruins of Kalibangan hold one of the Harappan civilization's most tantalizing enigmas. Rows of raised brick platforms, their surfaces charred black with ancient fire. These aren't mere hearths or cooking pits. Their precise alignment, ceremonial arrangement, and traces of repeated burning suggest something far more profound. These are fire altars, and they may rewrite our understanding of Harappan spirituality while casting a flickering light on connections to later Vedic traditions. Excavations reveal at least 7 distinct altar complexes, each built with mathematical precision. The platforms are rectangular, lined with kiln-fired bricks, and often paired with smaller pits containing ash and animal bones. One particularly striking arrangement shows 3 altars in a row, their orientations matching cardinal directions north, east, and south, as if charting a sacred geography. The burns patterns tell a vivid story. These fires weren't haphazard. They burned at controlled temperatures, fueled by specific woods like sandalwood and cedar, their residues laced with traces of ghee and barley. This wasn't just combustion, it was ritual. Now, here's where the plot thickens. Similar fire altars appear in the Rig Veda, Hinduism's oldest text, which describes the yajna ceremony, a sacrificial fire offering central to Vedic worship. The parallels are uncanny. Both traditions used square or rectangular altars, prized purity of materials, and associated fire with cosmic order. Even the number 3 recurs. Vedic rituals often involve 3 fires representing earth, sky, and the intermediary space. But here's the catch. The Rig Veda was composed centuries after Kalibangan's decline. So, did the Harappans influence the Vedas, or did both cultures draw from an even older shared tradition? Some scholars point to the altar's astronomical alignments. At dawn during the equinoxes, sunlight strikes the central altar at Kalibangan at a precise angle, illuminating a channel designed to drain offerings. This mirrors later Vedic texts that dictate altar orientations based on solar movements. Yet there's a crucial difference. While Vedic altars were temporary, Kalabangans were permanent fixtures, suggesting a shift from communal, nomadic practices to settled urban worship. The animal bones add another layer. Unlike the grand sacrifices of later Hinduism, Kalabangans' offerings were modest, mostly goats and cattle, with no evidence of human or horse sacrifices described in early Vedic texts. This hints at a quieter, more sustainable spirituality, where fire wasn't a tool of appeasement but a bridge between realms. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the altar's abandonment. As the Gaga River dried up, the fires were carefully extinguished, the altars sealed with layers of clean silt, as if ritually closed rather than abruptly deserted. In that act, we might glimpse a people honoring their gods even as their world faded. Whether proto-Vedic or wholly unique, these altars remind us that some flames never truly die out, they transmute, lighting the way for those who come after. Ganwariwala sits silently under the Pakistani sun, a sprawling, half-finished metropolis frozen in time. Unlike Mohenjo-Daro's polished streets or Harappa's orderly grids, this city whispers of interrupted ambition. Unearthed foundations stretch for miles, marking where grand avenues and public baths were meant to rise, but the bricks stop abruptly, as if the builders simply walked away mid-project. This isn't just another ruin, it's a blueprint of a civilization hitting its limits, offering rare clues to the Harappan's most vulnerable moment. Walk the site today, and the signs of sudden abandonment are eerie. Half-laid floors trail off into dirt. Stockpiles of unused bricks still sit stacked near excavation pits, waiting 4,000 years for hands that never returned. Even more telling, the city's skeletal layout reveals a radical departure from classic Harappan planning. Where other cities boasted standardized block sizes, Ganwariwala's districts vary wildly, some sectors meticulously measured, others haphazardly patched together. It's as if the architects were improvising, struggling to adapt their famous precision to new pressures. So what went wrong? One theory points to water. Geological surveys show the nearby Hakra River, Ganwariwala's lifeline, began shifting course during construction. Satellite images reveal ancient channels suddenly diverting miles away, leaving half-built neighborhoods stranded. For a culture that engineered flawless drainage, watching their water source vanish mid-construction would have been catastrophic. But here's the twist: other Harappan cities survived similar droughts. Why did this one fail? The answer might lie in overreach. Ganwariwala was positioned at the empire's southern edge, a bold attempt to harness trade routes to the Arabian Sea. Its scale, nearly as large as Mohenjo-Daro, suggests the Harappans were betting big on expansion. But trade requires stability. When Mesopotamian records suddenly stop mentioning Meluha around 1900 BC, it hints at economic collapse. Perhaps Ganwariwala's unfinished walls aren't just victims of nature, but of an interconnected world unraveling. Yet the most haunting detail isn't in the ruins, it's beneath them. Soil samples show layers of silt beneath the foundations, proof the Harappans chose to build here despite knowing the flood risk. That's the real tragedy. This wasn't naivete. It was desperation. In those half-laid bricks, we see a civilization straining against its own limits, gambling on one last great city and losing. And that makes Ganwariwala more than a failure. It's a monument to ambition itself, raw and unresolved. Beneath the dust of Harappan homes lie treasures not of gold or ivory, but of clay, tiny, meticulously crafted toys that whisper across millennia about the laughter and learning of ancient childhoods. Archaeologists have unearthed everything from miniature ox carts with functional wheels to playful animal figurines, their surfaces worn smooth by small hands that held them 4,000 years ago. These aren't just artifacts, they're time machines offering glimpses into a society that valued play, creativity, and perhaps even the innocence of youth in ways startlingly familiar to us today. Take the iconic clay carts, for instance. These aren't crude lumps of baked earth, they're engineering marvels in miniature. Each cart features a pivoting front axle, allowing the wheels to turn independently, just like full-sized Harappan transport vehicles. Some even have tiny loops at the front, suggesting they were pulled by strings, perhaps by children racing them through dusty streets. The craftsmanship is deliberate. These toys mirror the adult world, hinting at a culture where play wasn't just amusement but preparation. A child pushing a clay cart wasn't just having fun. They were absorbing the rhythms of trade and transport that kept their civilization thriving. Then there's the menagerie of animal figurines, plump bulls with rolling wheels for legs, mischievous monkeys with articulated limbs, even birds with wings that flap when a string is tugged. The attention to anatomical detail is striking. A terracotta squirrel's bushy tail curls just so. A pottery dog's posture captures the alertness of a guardian. These weren't mass-produced trinkets. Fingerprints pressed into the clay reveal individual touches, as if a parent or artisan shaped each one with a specific child in mind. What's most revelatory is how these toys defy modern assumptions about ancient societies. Unlike Egyptian or Mesopotamian artifacts that often depict children as miniature adults in formal poses, Harappan toys celebrate whimsy. A spinning top found in Lothal isn't just a toy. It's a testament to pure, unscripted joy. Compare that to today's plastic action figures or digital screens, and the contrast feels bittersweet. The Harappans, it seems, understood something we're only now rediscovering. That play isn't frivolous. It's how cultures pass down values, spark imagination, and knit communities together. Perhaps the most poignant discovery comes from a cluster of toys found in a corner of a Harappan house. A set of miniature pots and plates, small enough for a child's hands. Nearby, adult-sized utensils were arranged as if for a meal. Was this a Bronze Age tea party, a lesson in domestic skills, or simply a moment of shared make-believe between parent and child? We'll never know for certain, but in that silent tableau we catch something universal. The timeless art of growing up, shaped not by grand monuments, but by humble clay and the love that molded it. In a world where ancient empires rose and fell by the sword, the Harappan civilization stands as a striking exception. While Mesopotamian kings boasted of conquests in stone inscriptions and Egyptian pharaohs filled their tombs with glittering daggers, the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro yield almost no weapons. No racks of spears, no caches of swords, just a handful of copper blades so thin and light they seem almost ceremonial. This absence isn't just unusual, it's revolutionary. Were the Harappans uniquely peaceful, or have we been looking for weapons in all the wrong places? Consider the contrast with their contemporaries. In Mesopotamia, the royal cemetery of contained soldiers buried with helmets, axes, and chariots. Even early Sumerian city-states maintained standing armies, their clay tablets detailing arsenals and military campaigns. Yet in Harappan sites, weapons account for less than 1% of metal artifacts. The few found, like a slender copper dagger from Mohenjo-Daro, lack the heft and wear marks of battlefield tools. Instead, most copper went to practical items, fishhooks, chisels, and razors. If this was a civilization prepared for war, they left shockingly little evidence. But before we romanticize them as Bronze Age pacifists, let's examine the alternative perishable weaponry. Wooden spears and bows would have decayed over millennia, leaving no trace. Some archaeologists point to a peculiar artifact, standardized stone weights shaped like sling bullets found by the thousands. Could these have been projectiles for staff slings, a weapon as devastating as it was biodegradable? The Harappans certainly had the engineering prowess. Their mastery of levers and tension is evident in their architecture. If they did field armies, they may have relied on weapons that simply didn't survive the ages. The most compelling argument for peace lies in their city's design. Unlike Mesopotamian settlements crammed behind defensive walls, Harappan urban planning radiated openness. Streets flowed unimpeded, houses lacked barred windows or guarded gates. Even their artwork shows no battle scenes, just dancing figures and grazing animals. When conflict threatened, other ancient cultures built fortresses. The Harappans built better drains, yet one discovery complicates the narrative. A group of skeletons at Mohenjo-Daro, some bearing violent injuries, dubbed the massacre grave. This find suggests that whatever peace the Harappans maintained, it wasn't absolute. Perhaps their real innovation wasn't the absence of war, but its marginalization, a society where trade and sanitation mattered more than conquest. In a world where history is written by the victorious, the Harappans whisper a different truth, that civilization's highest achievements might not be measured in weapons but in their lack. Buried in the ashes of time, a tiny scrap of fabric no bigger than a postage stamp rewrote history. Found clinging to a silver vase in Mohenjo-Daro, this ancient textile fragment, carbon dated to around 3200 BC, isn't just old. It's revolutionary. This was cotton carefully spun and woven centuries before the fiber appeared anywhere else on Earth. While the Egyptians were still wrapping their dead in linen, and the Chinese hadn't yet domesticated silkworms, the Harappans were already wearing garments light enough for their sweltering summers, yet durable enough to survive millennia in the ground. This wasn't just cultivation, it was an agricultural and industrial breakthrough that would eventually clothe the world. How did they achieve it? The Harappans didn't just grow cotton, they transformed it. Excavations across the Indus Valley reveal spindle walls, disc-shaped clay weights used in spinning by the thousands. These weren't crude tools, they were precision instruments. Each wall's weight determined thread thickness, lighter ones for delicate yarns, heavier for robust cords. Archaeologists even found walls with standardized grooves, suggesting spinning wheels or distaffs to speed production. The resulting thread was so fine, some strands rival modern 60-count cotton. Imagine Bronze Age hands spinning fibers thinner than a millimeter, then weaving them into cloth so breathable it became a hot weather staple from Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean. But the real marvel lies in the fields, not the workshops. The Harappans cultivated Gossypium arboreum, a now rare cotton species native to the Indus region. Unlike wild cotton, which grew as a perennial shrub, they selectively bred annual varieties that could be planted and harvested in sync with monsoon rains. This wasn't accidental domestication, it was early genetic engineering. Their cotton balls were larger, their fibers longer and stronger, making them ideal for spinning. Traces of cotton seeds found in Harappan plows confirm they rotated cotton with wheat and barley, a revolutionary farming technique that prevented soil depletion. The global impact of this innovation is staggering. Mesopotamian tablets from 2400 BCE mention meluha cloth arriving by ship, likely Harappan cotton traded for silver and lapis lazuli. Later, when Alexander the Great's armies reached India in the 4th century BCE, they marveled at trees bearing wool, spreading tales of this wonder fabric back to Europe. By the Roman era, Indian cotton was so coveted that Pliny the Elder complained it drained the empire's silver reserves. Every pair of jeans, every cotton t-shirt today descends from those first Harappan spinners. Yet the most poignant evidence isn't in trade records, it's in the artifacts. A terracotta figurine from Harappa wears a patterned shawl, its crisscross weave still visible in the clay impression. A fragment from Lothal bears traces of madder dye, proving they didn't just make fabric, they colored it vibrant reds and blues. These weren't utilitarian textiles, they were expressions of identity, artistry, and comfort. In a civilization that left no paintings or grand sculptures, these humble threads may be their most intimate legacy, whispers of softness in a world of brick and bronze. And that's the true thread connecting us to them, the universal desire to not just survive, but to clothe our lives in beauty. At the edge of the Sabarmati River, where the land meets the Arabian Sea, lies a structure so advanced it rewrites our understanding of ancient maritime trade, the dockyard of Lothal. Unlike the simple wharves of its contemporaries, this was a feat of hydraulic engineering, a carefully designed port that harnessed the tides themselves to serve a bustling Bronze Age metropolis. Satellite images reveal its outline with startling clarity, a massive rectangular basin over 200 meters long connected to the river by a narrow channel. But it's the details that astonish: tidal gates built from precisely fitted bricks, a spillway to control water flow, and even a lock system that allowed ships to pass regardless of the tide's ebb and flow. This wasn't just a place to dock boats, it was a machine, a living, breathing nexus of global trade. Walk the ruins today and the sophistication becomes palpable. The dock's walls slope inward at a calculated angle, reducing erosion from constant water movement. The floor was layered with kiln-baked bricks set in bitumen, creating a watertight seal that survived millennia. But the real genius lies in the tidal lock, a gateway that could be opened or closed to trap seawater at high tide, maintaining a consistent depth even when the river ran low. Imagine the precision required: engineers tracking lunar cycles to predict tides, artisans crafting bricks to millimeter tolerances, laborers coordinating to load and unload goods from far-flung lands. This was Apple-level innovation in an era when most of humanity was still figuring out the wheel. Debate still rages about its exact function. Some argue it was primarily a shipbuilding yard, citing the discovery of stone anchors and terracotta models of sailing vessels. Others point to its strategic location just a day's sail from the Gulf of Combat as evidence of a customs hub, where goods like carnelian, ivory, and cotton were inspected before export. The most tantalizing theory, that Lothal's dock wasn't just for practical use but also a statement of power. Its scale, large enough to berth 20 ships simultaneously, would have awed visiting traders, a Bronze Age equivalent of a modern megaport. Yet the most telling clues lie in what was traded. Mesopotamian seals found here bear the same unicorn motifs as those in Harappa, while chemical analysis of Lothal's pottery reveals traces of wine from as far away as the Zagros Mountains. This was globalization in action 4,000 years before the term existed, and that's what makes Lothal's dockyard more than an engineering marvel. It's a testament to human ambition, a place where the Harappans didn't just adapt to their environment. They bent it to their will. The so-called massacre at Mohenjo-Daro has lingered in archaeology textbooks for decades, a chilling tableau of skeletons sprawled haphazardly across a street, some with arms raised as if frozen mid-defense. When first uncovered in 1925, British archaeologist Mortimer Wheeler declared it proof of an Aryan invasion that toppled the Harappan civilization. The scene seemed undeniable, a city struck by sudden violence, its people cut down where they stood. But science has a way of unraveling even the most compelling narratives. Modern forensics and re-examined excavation records reveal a story far more complex and far less cinematic than Wheeler's colonial-era assumptions. Start with the skeletons themselves. Recent isotopic analysis shows these individuals didn't die simultaneously, as a massacre would demand. Their bones display varying levels of weathering, some bleached by years of sun exposure before burial, others relatively fresh. The defensive postures turn out to be the natural collapse of ligaments as bodies decomposed in open spaces. Even more telling, none show the telltale trauma of blade wounds. The few fractures present are consistent with collapsed buildings or later disturbances, not combat. This wasn't a battlefield, it was a slow accumulation of deaths over generations, possibly from disease or environmental stress. Wheeler's interpretation now appears colored by the era's obsession with invasion theories. His own excavation notes, often overlooked, admit finding no weapons among the bones. The warrior Aryans he invoked left no archaeological footprint in Mohenjo-Daro's final layers. Instead, the city's decline coincides precisely with geological evidence of catastrophic flooding. Layers of silt sandwich the massacre level, suggesting repeated inundations that may have forced abandonment. Those contorted skeletons, likely victims left unburied during chaotic evacuations, their remains later scattered by floodwaters. The most damning evidence comes from the site's stratigraphy. The skeletons weren't clustered on a single horizon but scattered across multiple layers spanning centuries. Wheeler's team, digging hastily through these strata, inadvertently compressed them into a single dramatic moment. Contemporary archaeologists liken it to flipping through a book's pages too quickly and declaring the entire story a single sentence. Perhaps the greatest irony lies in what was overlooked. Just meters from the massacre area, excavators found undisturbed households with valuables still in place, jewelry under floorboards, intact pottery on shelves. No conqueror would have left such wealth untouched. The truth seems profoundly ordinary. Mohenjo-Daro didn't fall in fire and blood but in water and mud, its people gradually dispersing as their engineered world succumbed to forces even their brilliance couldn't control. The real violence wasn't inflicted by invaders but by time itself and our eagerness to project familiar stories onto the silent past. Chanhu-daro wasn't just another Harappan settlement. It was the Silicon Valley of ancient bead-making, a humming industrial hub where raw stones transformed into treasures coveted from Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean. Walk through its workshops today, and the ground still shimmers with fragments of carnelian, lapis lazuli, and agate, remnants of an assembly line that operated 4,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. But this wasn't simple craftsmanship. The scale was staggering. Excavations uncovered over 25,000 beads in a single season, each one a testament to precision engineering, relentless trade networks, and a mastery of materials that borders on alchemy. Start with the star of Chanhu-daro's production, carnelian, a fiery orange-red stone mine from the distant hills of Gujarat. Harappan artisans didn't just polish these gems. They perfected a 6-stage manufacturing process that modern jewelers struggle to replicate without power tools. First, raw chunks were heat-treated in kilns at precise temperatures, turning the stone from dull brown to vibrant red. Then, using copper drills tipped with diamond dust, diamond workers bored holes so fine a human hair could barely pass through. The real genius lay in their drilling rigs. Reconstructed models show bow-driven rotary tools that could achieve 300 revolutions per minute, a speed unmatched until the Roman era. Microscopic analysis reveals something astonishing. These drills left spiral grooves identical to those made by modern dental equipment. The factory floors tell an even richer story. Rows of grinding stones, each with custom grooves for different bead shapes, suggest specialization down to individual artisans. Waste piles are meticulously sorted. Chip marks show workers flaking stones to near-perfect spheres before final polishing with river sand and leather. But the most telling detail, standardization. Beads from Chanhu-daro match those found in Mesopotamian royal tombs down to the millimeter, proving these weren't one-off trinkets but mass-produced exports. Imagine Bronze Age quality control, supervisors checking each bead against terracotta gauges, rejecting any that didn't meet exacting standards. Then there's the global footprint. Chemical sourcing traces lapis lazuli beads from Chanhu-daro to Afghan mines 1,000 miles away, while Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets praise Meluhan beads as luxury imports. Some were even threaded with gold caps in turning them into diplomatic gifts. But the real shock came when archaeologists found Harappan-style drilled beads in Egyptian tombs predating the pharaohs, proof that this tiny factory's influence stretched farther than anyone imagined. What makes Chanhu-daro extraordinary isn't just the beads but the system behind them. This was supply chain management in antiquity. Raw materials sourced across continents, labor divided into specialized teams, products shipped to distant markets. In an era when most cultures barely mastered pottery wheels, the Harappans were running what might be history's first vertically integrated industry. And that's the real treasure, not the glittering stones, but the invisible web of innovation that made them possible. High in the salty marshes of Gujarat's Rann of Kutch, the Harappan city of Dolavera performed what might be ancient history's greatest disappearing act, not of people but of water. While Rome's aqueducts snaked across landscapes in stone arcs, and Egypt's Nile-fed canals sprawled visibly under the sun, Dolavera's engineers mastered a stealthier art, storing monsoons like buried treasure. 16 reservoirs, some carved into living rock, others lined with precisely fitted stone blocks, formed a hidden hydraulic network capable of holding over 300,000 liters. But these weren't just storage pits, they were feats of ecological foresight, designed to outlast droughts that could stretch for years. Start with the geography. Dolavera sat on an island in the seasonal Mansar River, surrounded by evaporative salt flats. Rainfall was erratic torrential downpours followed by parching dry spells. The Harappans responded not by fighting nature but by bending it to their needs. Their reservoirs followed a cascading design. Higher catchments fed by stone-cut channels during floods would gradually release water to lower tanks via gravity, ensuring a steady supply. The largest reservoir, flanking the city's fortified citadel, stretched nearly 80 meters long with a depth of 7 meters, enough to sustain thousands through the harshest summers. Compare this to Rome's famed aqueducts, which prioritized constant flow over storage. While Roman engineers moved water across distances, Harappans optimized every drop locally. Dolavera's system included something startlingly modern: sedimentation tanks. Incoming water first passed through small basins where silt could settle, preventing reservoir clogging, a technique still used in today's treatment plants. Even their wells were engineering marvels, lined with wedge-shaped bricks that resisted collapsing under pressure, some reaching down to fossil aquifers. But the real genius lay in scale. While Roman systems served elite urban centers, Dolavera's waterworks democratized access. Channels fed not just citadel baths but potters' quarters and craft workshops. Storm drains doubled as distribution networks, redirecting sudden floods to parched fields. This wasn't just survival, it was communal resilience encoded in stone. The most haunting lesson comes from Dolavera's decline. Sediment layers reveal the reservoirs were repeatedly dredged in their final years, a desperate bid against worsening droughts. Yet even in collapse, they left a blueprint. Modern villages in Gujarat still use Harappan-inspired circular wells called vavdis, proving that in a world battling climate shifts, 4,000-year-old wisdom might just hold the key to our future. Of all the mysteries left behind by the Harappan civilization, nothing captures the imagination quite like their unicorn seals. These tiny, intricately carved stone tablets found by the thousands across Indus Valley sites all showcase a strange, stocky creature with a single curved horn projecting from its forehead. At first glance, it looks like something from mythology, a Bronze Age precursor to medieval unicorns, but peer closer and the questions multiply. Why does this one image dominate their seal economy when other cultures depicted gods, kings, and battle scenes? And is this even a unicorn at all, or something far more ordinary, transformed by artistic convention? The numbers alone are staggering. Over 60% of all Harappan seals feature this single-horned beast, often standing before a ritualistic object that scholars call a standard. Some seals show the creature with its head lowered as if charging, others with a peaceful, almost domesticated posture. What's baffling is the consistency, the same proportions, the same stylized musculature, repeating across centuries and hundreds of miles of territory. This wasn't casual artistry, it was a deliberate, sustained choice. But for what purpose? One school of thought insists these are literal unicorns, proof of a lost Harappan mythology. Proponents point to the creature's unique posture, unlike any real animal, and the fact that no known bull species has a single horn centered on its forehead. The ritual objects nearby suggest divine associations, perhaps a sacred animal akin to Nandi, the bull of Shiva. If true, these seals might be religious tokens, invoking protection for trade goods or homes. Then there's the skeptic's view. Overlaying hundreds of seal designs reveals something fascinating. The unicorn might just be a bull in profile, with its second horn obscured by artistic shorthand. Ancient Near Eastern cultures often depicted bulls with symmetrical, forward-curving horns that could merge into one when viewed from the side. Supporting this, some rare Harappan seals show two horned bulls, nearly identical in body shape to the unicorn. Maybe the single horn was simply easier to carve on tiny seals without losing detail. But here's where it gets even stranger. Advanced imaging techniques have uncovered faint, previously unnoticed markings on some unicorn seals, patterns that resemble harnesses or decorative trappings. Could these be prize animals, symbols of wealth and status rather than mythology? In Mesopotamian seals, bulls often represented kingship and power. Perhaps the Harappan elite used these images as trademarks, stamping their authority on goods and documents. The most tantalizing clue lies in the standard that accompanies the unicorn. This T-shaped object, sometimes topped with rings or streamers, appears nowhere else in Harappan art. Some speculate it's a sacrificial altar, others a merchant's measuring rod. One daring theory suggests it's a cryptographic marker, a code indicating the seal's function or owner, turning each unicorn into a kind of Bronze Age barcode. Ultimately, the unicorn seals defy easy answers. They could be sacred symbols, bureaucratic tools, or simply the Harappan equivalent of a corporate logo. What's certain is that they weren't random. In a civilization that left no grand murals or statues, these tiny carvings might be shouting the very things the Harappans valued most, if only we could hear them. And that's the magic of archaeology. Sometimes the smallest artifacts hold the loudest secrets. Rising from the arid plains of Rajasthan, the circular platforms of Kalibangan stand like silent stone enigmas, broad, flat discs of baked brick, some measuring over 15 meters across, their edges slightly raised as if to contain something lost to time. Seen from above, they form perfect rings scattered across the citadel, aligned with a precision that whispers of purpose. Unlike the angular architecture typical of Harappan cities, these circles break the grid, inviting speculation. Were they granaries shielding harvests from rodents, ancient parliaments where voices echoed off curved walls, or stages for rituals that bound the community under open skies? Start with the grain theory. Similar circular structures in later Indian history, like the Buddhist stupas at Sanchai, famously doubled as storage for food and relics. The Kalibangan platform's raised edges would have kept out water and pests, while their open design allowed air to circulate, critical for preserving harvests in the monsoon-heavy Indus Valley. Excavations nearby revealed charred wheat and barley grains, lending weight to this practical explanation. But here's the hitch. Why build so many identical platforms in a single city? Wouldn't a few large warehouses suffice? Unless, of course, these weren't just storage units but decentralized collection points where farmers from different quarters deposited their yields as a form of early tax distribution. Now pivot to the social angle. The largest platform sits near Kalibangan's central marketplace, its surface worn smooth by foot traffic. Could these have been Bronze Age amphitheaters where traders haggled, elders arbitrated disputes, or storytellers held crowds wrapped under the stars? The acoustics are uncanny. A whisper from the center carries clearly to the edges, a feature seen in later Greek and Roman forums. One tantalizing clue: a cluster of fire altars was found just northwest of the main platform, suggesting ceremonies that might have blended commerce, governance, and spirituality into a single space. Imagine the scene: flames flickering as merchants swore oaths on goods, or priests invoked blessings over communal feasts. Then there's the celestial interpretation. Several platforms align with solstice sunrises. their shadows at dawn dividing the circles into precise segments. Harappan engineers who calibrated drainage systems to the millimeter certainly had the skill to encode astronomical knowledge into architecture. Perhaps these were proto-observatories where tracking the sun's path dictated planting cycles or festival dates. The most compelling evidence, a terracotta model found in nearby Banawali, depicts a circular platform topped with a pillar, a possible gnomon for measuring shadows like a primitive sundial. Yet the platform's true genius might lie in their flexibility. Unlike temples or palaces which fossilize a single function, these circles could have been multi-tools of civic life. Storage one season, a courtroom the next, a dance floor during festivals. In a civilization that left no written records, their adaptability speaks volumes. The Harappans didn't just build for the moment, they crafted spaces that evolved with their needs. And that's the real revelation, not what these platforms were, but how they embody a culture that thrived not by imposing rigidity, but by embracing change. Amid the ruins of Harappan homes and workshops, archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of delicate terracotta figurines, curvaceous female forms with ornate headdresses, exaggerated hips, and knowing smiles. Dubbed mother goddesses by early excavators, these clay statuettes have long been held up as proof of a fertility cult central to Harappan spirituality. But peel back the assumptions and a far more complex picture emerges. Were these truly objects of worship, or something more intimate, tokens of daily life, playful art, or even ancient toys? Consider the diversity of these figures across different sites. At Mohenjo-Daro, the so-called dancing girl, bronze draws comparisons to later Dividoses, her confident stance suggesting ritual significance. Yet in Harappa, similar figurines appear alongside cooking pots and spindle walls, their chipped edges showing wear from daily handling. The most telling variations emerge in their craftsmanship. Some are meticulously detailed, with intricate jewelry and facial features, while others are crude, almost cartoonish, as if mass-produced by amateur hands. If these were sacred icons, why the wild inconsistency in quality and context? The fertility goddess theory leans heavily on parallels with other ancient cultures. In Nana of Mesopotamia, Isis of Egypt, where female figurines symbolized agricultural abundance and creation. Yet Harappan goddesses lack the symbolic motifs seen elsewhere. No grain sheaves, no serpents, no infants at their breasts. Instead, many clutch small bowls or wear skirts decorated with geometric patterns, details that feel more domestic than divine. One striking example from Lothal shows a woman kneading dough, her hands pressed into the clay just as a baker's would be. Is this a deity or a snapshot of ordinary labor immortalized in art? Then there's the sheer volume. Excavations at some sites reveal dozens of these figurines in a single household, far more than typical religious artifacts in contemporary cultures. Were Harappan homes packed with shrines, or is there another explanation? Ethnographic studies of modern South Asian villages offer a clue. Women often create clay dolls as teaching tools for daughters, modeling childcare or household tasks. Could these ancient figurines serve a similar purpose? Their broken limbs, repaired with reed pegs, suggest they were handled, not just displayed. Perhaps the boldest challenge to the goddess theory comes from their absence in Harappan seals, the civilization's most formal medium. While bulls and unicorns dominate these official artifacts, female imagery is nearly non-existent. If fertility worship was central to Harappan religion, why wouldn't it appear in their most permanent records? The discrepancy forces us to reconsider whether we've projected later Hindu traditions onto an entirely different culture. The truth may lie in between. Some figurines, like the regal Queen of Harappa, with her towering headdress, undeniably carry an aura of authority, possibly representing ancestral spirits or clan matriarchs. Others, like the cheeky Red Lady of Kalibangan with her hands on her hips, radiate playful humanity. Rather than a single explanation, these terracotta women might reflect a spectrum of meanings, sacred and mundane, revered and relatable. In their silent smiles, we catch glimpses of a civilization that celebrated womanhood not just as a force of nature, but as the heartbeat of everyday life. And that, perhaps, is the most profound revelation of all. The silent symbols of the Harappan script have long taunted linguists with their cryptic precision, but one theory threads a particularly compelling connection: an ancient link to the Dravidian languages still spoken by millions in southern India today. Picture the scene. In the 1960s, Finnish scholar Asko Paapors pored over the tiny Indus seals, noticing something startling. Certain symbol sequences mirrored word structures in Proto-Dravidian, the reconstructed ancestor of languages like Tamil and Telugu. Take the recurring fish motif, for example. In Proto-Dravidian, the word for fishmin also meant star, a celestial metaphor rooted in the way stars were thought to swim across the night sky like fish in water. Now examine Harappan seals where fish symbols appear alongside celestial patterns. Could these be early rebuses using visual puns to encode abstract concepts? Not everyone is convinced. Critics point out glaring holes in the Dravidian hypothesis. Unlike Mesopotamian cuneiform or Egyptian hieroglyphs, which evolved from accounting tokens and pictograms, the Harappan script shows no clear progression from simple to complex forms. More damningly, the Dravidian link relies heavily on later medieval scripts like Tamil Brahmi, leaving a yawning 2,000-year gap between the fall of the Indus Valley and the earliest confirmed Dravidian writing. Then there's the Indo-European challenge. Some computational analyzers suggest Harappan symbols share syntax patterns with Sanskrit, the ancient language of the Vedas. Proponents of this view argue that the script's directional variations, some characters face left, others right, mirror the sand-high rules of Sanskrit, where word endings change based on neighboring sounds. But here's the rub. Sanskrit didn't arrive in South Asia until around 1500 BCE, centuries after the Harappan decline. Could it have borrowed from an even older Indus linguistic substrate, preserving echoes of a lost tongue? The debate grows thornier when you consider the cultural context. Dravidian languages historically thrived in India's south, while the Harappan heartland lies far to the northwest. Yet genetic studies reveal a startling continuity. Modern South Indians carry significant ancestry from Indus Valley populations, suggesting migration or cultural exchange long before recorded history. Meanwhile, place names in the northwest, like Mohenjo-Daro itself, contain elements that some linguists argue are Dravidian in origin, hinting at a linguistic layer buried beneath later Indo-European dominance. What if both theories are grasping at fragments of a bigger truth? The Harappan script might represent a linguistic bridge, blending elements from multiple language families before fading into obscurity. Computational linguists using Markov models, a statistical method for predicting symbol sequences, find the script shares features with both agglutinative languages like Dravidian, where words build from prefixes and suffixes, and inflected ones like Sanskrit, where words change internally. This could explain why neither camp has cracked the code. The script may not belong wholly to either family, but to a lost intermediary that influenced both. The most tantalizing clue comes from a surprising source: the nomadic Bhil tribes of Western India. Their oral traditions preserve words with no Indo-European parallels but striking resemblances to Proto-Dravidian, alongside symbols resembling Harappan characters. Could these be linguistic fossils, remnants of an Indus Valley tongue that survived in isolated pockets? Until the script yields its secrets, every theory remains a shadow on the cave wall, glimpses of a language that shaped the subcontinent's first civilization, then vanished without a whisper. Walking through Mohenjo-Daro's streets today, you'd be forgiven for thinking you'd stumbled onto a modern city blueprint. The layout isn't just orderly, it's eerily precise, with main avenues running dead straight for miles, intersecting secondary lanes at perfect 90-degree angles to form blocks of nearly identical dimensions. This isn't the organic sprawl of Mesopotamia or the labyrinthine paths of ancient Egypt. The Harappans didn't just build cities, they engineered them with the rigor of mathematicians, aligning their urban grids to celestial patterns that suggest a sophistication we're only beginning to decode. Take the orientation of Mohenjo-Daro's major streets, almost perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions, north-south and east-west, with deviations of less than 1 degree. This wasn't accidental. Archaeoastronomers have found that the primary avenue aligns with the rising sun of the summer solstice, casting shadows that would have tracked like a sundial across the baked brick facades. Even more striking, the grid's proportions follow a recurring ratio of 1:2, mirrored in the dimensions of individual housing blocks. A typical block measures exactly twice as long as it is wide, a pattern repeated across Harappa, Dolavira, and Kalibangan. This uniformity implies something revolutionary: standardized urban planning, possibly enforced with measuring ropes or wooden templates to ensure consistency across hundreds of miles. But the real marvel lies beneath the streets. The Harappan grid wasn't just surface deep, it extended underground, with drainage channels running parallel to the roads at mathematically calculated gradients. Each intersection featured a sump pit to catch debris, and every few blocks the drains included manholes capped with limestone slabs for maintenance. The precision is staggering. Laser scans reveal slope angles of precisely 2 degrees, ensuring wastewater flowed steadily without erosion. Compare this to the haphazard gutters of contemporaneous Ur or Memphis, where drainage was an afterthought. What's often overlooked is how this grid served as a social equalizer. Unlike Mesopotamian cities, where winding alleys separated elite districts from slums, Harappan blocks show no evidence of zoning by class. Artisans lived in the same proportioned homes as traders, their workshops opening onto the same broad avenues. The grid's democracy even extended to traffic flow. Main streets were exactly twice as wide as side lanes, a Bronze Age precursor to modern hierarchy of streets design. The most tantalizing theory involves the grid's possible cosmological significance. At Dolavira, the entire city forms a giant rectangle divided into 3 nested sections: citadel, middle town, lower town, matching the Vedic concept of Triloka, the 3-tiered universe. Some researchers propose the grid mirrored the Harappans' vision of cosmic order, with streets acting as terrestrial echoes of celestial paths. Supporting this, certain lanes align not just with solstices but with the star Sirius, which ancient cultures from Egypt to India associated with renewal. Yet the lingering question isn't how they achieved this precision, but why no one else did. Contemporary cultures had geometry. Egypt's pyramid builders, after all, mastered the right angle, but none applied it to urban living with such relentless consistency. The answer might lie in the Harappans' unique worldview. For them, cleanliness wasn't just practical, it was sacred. Their grids weren't merely efficient, they were expressions of harmony, where every brick, every drain, every sunrise-aligned avenue whispered a quiet truth: civilization isn't an accident. It's a calculation, and 4,000 years later, their streets still teach us that the most enduring revolutions aren't fought with swords, but with squares and compasses. Deep beneath the sun-baked streets of Mohenjo-Daro lies a mystery that has fueled explorer legends for over a century, a network of subterranean passages so carefully constructed they defy simple explanation. British archaeologist Ernest Mackay first documented these tunnels in the 1920s, describing brick-lined corridors barely wide enough for a crouching adult, their ceilings reinforced with wooden beams that somehow survived 4 millennia of decay. But here's what's bizarre. Unlike the city's famed drainage systems, these passages don't connect to any known water sources. They dive straight down at sharp angles, leading to chambers with no apparent purpose, no artifacts, no burials, just empty spaces that echo with unanswered questions. Local lore adds layers to the intrigue. Villagers near the site whisper of Norani tunnels, a reference to supernatural light, claiming their ancestors spoke of underground roads stretching between cities. One persistent tale describes a British officer in the 1880s who supposedly lowered a lantern into a shaft only for the flame to flicker out mysteriously halfway down. When researchers from the Pakistan Archaeology Department conducted ground-penetrating radar scans in 2012, they detected anomalies consistent with hollow spaces beneath unexcavated sectors, but funding ran out before they could dig deeper. The theories surrounding these tunnels range from practical to fantastical. Some scholars argue they were hydrological experiments designed to tap into deep aquifers during droughts. Others note their resemblance to souterrains, underground storage areas used by later Celtic cultures. But the most tantalizing hypothesis comes from archaeologist Jonathan Mark Kenoyer, who points to their alignment with certain celestial events. During the winter solstice, sunlight penetrates one excavated shaft at Mohenjo-Daro at a precise angle, striking a carved stone marker at the tunnel's end, a feature seen in ancient observatories from Newgrange to Machu Picchu. Could these passages have served as ritual pathways, guiding initiates through symbolic journeys of darkness and light? Modern explorers have added fuel to the mystery. In 2019, an unauthorized expedition led by an amateur historian claimed to find a sealed chamber filled with unusual metallic objects, though their blurry photos were dismissed as hoaxes by mainstream archaeologists. More credible is the account of Dr. Farzand Massi, who documented a tunnel beneath the so-called Great Granary that abruptly terminates at a wall of deliberately collapsed bricks. His team's thermal imaging revealed empty space beyond, but Pakistani heritage laws forbid destructive testing on UNESCO-protected sites. Perhaps the most sobering perspective comes from engineering analysis. The tunnel's construction mirrors earthquake-resistant techniques still used in the region today, with staggered brick courses that allow flexibility during tremors. This suggests a pragmatic purpose: emergency shelters or fail-safes for a civilization acutely aware of their environment's instability, yet their emptiness gnaws at us. If these were utilitarian spaces, why leave no trace of use? If sacred, why no offerings or markings? The tunnel's silence may be their loudest statement. In a civilization that left no written records, these subterranean labyrinths force us to confront the limits of our understanding. They remind us that some histories aren't just unknown, they're deliberately buried, waiting for the right light to reveal them. And until that day comes, they remain the Harappan's most enigmatic whisper from below. The Harappan goldsmiths didn't just craft jewelry, they performed alchemy, turning humble metals into wearable masterpieces with techniques so advanced, modern artisans still study their methods. Among their most astonishing skills was lost wax casting, a process so precise it could capture the delicate veins of a leaf or the intricate folds of a textile in solid gold. Picture this: a craftsman sculpts a beeswax model of a necklace pendant, carving each curve with a copper stylus. Next, they encase the wax in fine clay, leaving a small channel. When heated, the wax melts away, leaving a hollow mold. Molten gold is poured in, filling every crevice, and once cooled, the clay is shattered to reveal a perfect metal replica. The genius: no two pieces were ever identical, as each wax original was destroyed in the process. Now, zoom in on the necklace designs themselves. Excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro have uncovered strands of gold beads so uniform in size, they suggest the use of calibrated measuring tools. Some necklaces feature spacer beads made of steatite, a soft stone dyed vivid blue or green, creating a striking contrast against the gold. But the real showstoppers are the pendants. One found in Lothal depicts two peacocks facing each other, their feathers rendered in filigree so fine it resembles lace. Another, from Kalibangan, shows a pipal leaf with raised midribs and serrated edges, a nod to nature's artistry. The Harappans didn't just mimic life, they elevated it, embedding symbolism into every curve. What's truly groundbreaking is the metallurgical sophistication. Spectrographic analysis reveals these goldsmiths alloyed gold with silver or copper, not just for economy but for artistry. By varying ratios, they achieved different hues: rose gold for floral motifs, pale yellow for abstract geometric designs. They even mastered soldering, using a mixture of gold dust and plant resin to fuse seams invisibly. The legacy of these techniques echoes across millennia. Similar lost wax casting appears in later Indian eras, like the Chola bronzes, suggesting an unbroken lineage of craftsmanship. Yet the Harappans' true innovation wasn't just their skill, it was their vision. In a civilization that left no portraits of kings, their gold whispers a different kind of power, the quiet brilliance of hands that shaped beauty not for monuments but for the human touch. At first glance, the so-called priest king of Mohenjo-Daro seems to embody authority. His serene gaze, his draped robe, his fillet head, and all exuding quiet command. But look closer and the certainty unravels. This 7-inch-tall steatite figure, discovered in 1927, has been labeled everything from a divine ruler to a high priest, yet the Harappans left no inscriptions to confirm his identity. His very name reflects our assumptions, not their reality. What if this iconic artifact isn't a portrait of an individual at all, but something far more intriguing? A symbolic fusion of power and spirituality, crafted to represent an ideal rather than a person. Start with the visual cues. The figure's downcast eyes and composed lips radiate tranquility, a stark contrast to Mesopotamian royal art, where kings stare boldly forward, their muscles taut, their hands gripping weapons or vanquished enemies. Even his posture speaks volumes. He sits cross-legged, not on a throne but what appears to be a simple dais. His draped garments trefoil patterns echoing designs found on ceremonial pottery rather than battle standards. That trefoil motif offers a vital clue. In later Hindu and Buddhist traditions, 3-part symbols often represent cosmic harmony or the Trimurti. Could this figure embody a similar trinity of roles: ruler, priest, and mediator between realms? Now juxtapose him with his Mesopotamian counterparts. A Babylonian victory stele shows King Naram-Sin climbing a mountain, his enemies trampled beneath his feet, his horned helmet marking him as divinely appointed. The Harappan priest king wears no such crown, just a simple headband and an elaborate cloak pinned at the shoulder. His power isn't flaunted, it's implied. This distinction might reveal a fundamental cultural divide. Where Mesopotamians celebrated the king as conqueror, the Harappans may have venerated leadership as stewardship, less about dominion over people, more about balance with the natural and spiritual world. The statue's craftsmanship deepens the mystery. Unlike mass-produced Harappan seals, this figure is one of a kind, carved from rare, imported steatite, its surface polished to a sheen that would have caught the light during rituals. Microscopic analysis reveals traces of red pigment in the headband's grooves, hinting at ceremonial adornment. But here's the twist: the figure's body is genderless, no beard like Mesopotamian rulers, no emphasized musculature. This absence of gendered markers could suggest a role transcending human categories, perhaps a symbolic bridge between earthly and divine authority. Perhaps the most radical reinterpretation comes from comparing the statue's features to other Harappan art. The priest king's half-closed eyes mirror those of yogi figurines found in later Indus sites, while his robe's folds resemble the terracotta mother goddess figure's draped garments. Could he be less a political leader and more a spiritual archetype, a visual mantra of enlightened governance? In the end, the priest king refuses to fit neatly into any box. His silence is his message. True power in the Harappan world wasn't about towering over others, but about embodying an ideal so profound it needed no explanation. From the undeciphered script that still guards its secrets to the mind-bending precision of their city grids, the Harappan civilization wasn't just ahead of its time, it seems to defy time altogether. Think about it, their standardized weights predicted binary systems millennia before computers. Their fire altars hinted at rituals that would echo in Vedic traditions centuries later. And their shell workshops operated like Bronze Age factories, mass-producing luxury goods for a global market. Even their disappearances, abandoned cities with no signs of war, half-built metropolises frozen mid-construction, challenge everything we thought we knew about how civilizations fall. These 30 mysteries aren't just trivia, they're seismic shifts in understanding. The dancing girl isn't merely a statue, she's a revolution in art, capturing movement and personality centuries before the Greeks. The Great Bath wasn't just a pool but possibly an astronomical instrument, its water reflecting the heavens, and those eerie unicorn seals, whether sacred symbols or ancient barcodes, they prove the Harappans didn't need words to leave a legacy that still captivates us today. Now it's your turn. Which mystery hooked you the most? Do you think the script will ever be cracked, or is its silence part of its power? Drop your wildest theories in the comments. Maybe your idea will be the next big breakthrough. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into history's unsolved puzzles, hit that subscribe button. The past isn't finished talking, and we're just getting